Hello there. Look, I bought myself. It's an iRadio UV-98 Plus, which by the way is the same as the new Radtel RT-880. So for those of you that don't know, it's one of those new generation of handheld transceivers that hit the market at ridiculous prices that can receive AM and HF or shortwave bands in addition to your usual type walkie-talkie and VHF and UHF hand transceiver functions. And all for an amazing, I hope you're sitting down for this, $69. Now before I take this thing apart, let's just have a look at some of the key features it's got. So like I said, it can cover the long wave AM shortwave, and that includes single sideband and FM. And then on receive, it can receive all the way from 18 to 620 megahertz. Then there's a gap, and then it carries on from 840 megahertz all the way up to just shy of 1 gigahertz. For transmit, anywhere between 18 to 64 megahertz, and then 136 up to 520 megahertz. So a really broad band of transmit frequencies on this. And you'll notice it covers the CB band at 27 megahertz. So you've got yourself a handheld CB in addition to everything else. It's also got 2 transceivers in it. Well, we'll find out for sure when we crack this thing open. But what that means, it can relay signals received on one band, such as UHF, and retransmit it on another, such as VHF. So we've got a built-in cross-frequency repeater function. It's got a gorgeous 2.4-inch color display, and it utilizes that to allow you to receive 3 different bands at the same time, as you can see in the picture here. So that's where we say it's got a triple band reception. It's got like a spectrum display, not really a waterfall display, but it shows you a broad range of the RF spectrum and shows you where the stations are. And it's got 10 watts to boot, and that's just some of the features. So those are the key ones. So there's, as I said, there's plenty of other videos around showing the functions of this and how to operate it. So I'll make a few recommendations at the end of this video. Now, one channel I will call out now is by M0FXB. He's done a ton of videos on this radio, and he's usually the first to produce a YouTube video if a new piece of radio kit comes out. So if you haven't discovered him already, go and check him out, and I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. Now I'd like to give a quick shout out to PCBWay, who are the sponsor of today's video. PCBWay are my go-to for when I want to produce prototype PCBs. Simply upload your Gerber files and they'll give you an instant quote. In addition to providing PCB prototyping service, they also do PCB assembly, flex rigid PCBs, HDI PCBs, CNC machining, and even 3D printing. So head over to PCBWay.com for more information, and I'll leave a link in the description. Now the first thing to note is how well built this thing is. Compared to a normal radio, it's so much stronger. You could drop this and it would just bounce. And it feels heavy and chunky, nice size in the hand. Now look at that lovely screen, 2.4 inches of loveliness. Here it's being shown to show 3 receive frequencies, a local repeater, marine band, and air band. Notice that one's in AM. The keyboard is lovely as well. It feels really nice. Nice tactile feedback. And here you can see me just moving between the bands or the frequencies I've got to receive. Hit that button there on the left, which is one of the user definable buttons, and I've got it to go into the radio function. There you are, receiving FM. You'll notice it's receiving it through the UHF VHF antenna, and the speaker is cleverly integrated into the keyboard. Can you see? Or the keyboard's integrated into the speaker grill. I don't know which, but it's really clever. You see those little gaps for the audio? So that's a nice use of space. And then at the top here, you've got LED showing status, received status or whatever. You've got a power and volume knob.
Frequency mode.
And then you've got this button here, which is by default alarm, but it's user definable. You can change that, what that does. And then you've got this lovely spongy big black knob. Now, if you tug it, you're in for a surprise. Ta-da! Look at that. You've now got your shortwave HF AM longwave antenna connectors at SMA. I better pull this out before I poke your eye out. That's better. So then, as I was saying, this is what you would connect your magnetic loop. And on the left here, that's of course your UHF, VHF and FM radio antenna. And then we've got the PTT button, and then two further user definable buttons. Actually, they're all user definable. You just go into the menu, you can change the functions they're allocated to. We've run a short press, a long press, a battery there with the cradle charging connections. And then we've got a kind of a dust protected USB-C power connector, and it's also used for programming as well. And then up here we've got the mic button, the mic connector. Now that's not your normal Kenwood, your cheapo Kenwood. This is a more luxurious Motorola multi-pin type connector. It's a lot more secure, more professional I think, but some people don't like it so much. But you know, when you plug your mic in there and screw it up, it's not coming out. Let me know what's your favourite. I'll put that in before I forget. And what else we got? So yeah, on the bottom, nothing to write home about. Just pull the battery out. Yeah, nicely made. Now, this is interesting. The frequency range declared on the label on the back is not the same as in the manual. Now, I know that the frequency range is far greater than that, as we saw. So maybe it's a kind of a leftover from a previous model, which the factory's not bothered to upgrade when they changed the software or something. Battery is 2,400 milliamps at 7.2 volts. And then let's compare it to the Quangshen. So you've got 1,600. So it's a much bigger battery. Not surprising when the power output is double. Let's slot that back in. Yeah, so I'm liking it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting familiar with this. Let's compare it in size. The Quangshen UK5, UK6. You see it's a bit taller, a little bit thicker. Well, I actually like it. I think that the Quangshen feels a little bit small in the hand, actually. You see the Quangshen's still got its LED in there. I do have another one which I've upgraded with the HF mod. Let me just bring it over. There you are. Maybe I should do a modification video for the UV-98 where we change that silly SMA connector and put an LED in. What do you think? But what I would like to do, in all seriousness, I think I would prefer to have the 3.5mm jack for the HF antenna. You don't, at those frequencies, you don't really need SMA. The 3.5mm jack's good enough. And to be honest, I like the convenience. You just like plug it in and plug it out like you would on a normal radio. I may change that. Again, let me know what you think. Do you prefer the SMA or the 3.5 for HF? And let's have a look at the supplied antenna. So it does FM, no surprises there, and then 136 to 174 megahertz, and then 400 to 520. Now, it's important to make sure that you change the antenna if you're transmitting on a frequency outside those bands. Reflections could cause damage to the transmitter inside the device. Now, why these ham transceivers are readily available and becoming cheaper all the time and more powerful, remember you must respect the regulations in your country for what you can transmit on. Of course, you need to have a ham license for transmitting the ham bands. Whether or not you can transmit in the CB frequency band depends on your respective country. I remember actually as a kid, I was growing up in a village in England called Long Ashton, and I had a mate of mine who was living close by in a place called Clevedon. It must be about, I think maybe about 10 miles away, maybe 16 kilometers, something like that. And I was only a kid, I was about 13, 14, passionate about electronics. And I thought, I'm going to try and contact my friend by making my own AM radio transmitter. So I hooked up a couple of power transistors I took out of the line output stage of a TV, connected it up to 80 volt supply and a tank circuit or tuned circuit. And then I connected that to a long wire antenna spanning from the apex of the top of the roof of my parents' house to a tree at the bottom of the garden. And I managed, believe it or not, to transmit all the way to my friend's house on this crude transmitter. And it was so dirty my parents couldn't watch TV when it was transmitting. So I was very lucky I didn't get caught. So don't do that. Respect the regulations. Now some of the screws on this were really, really tight. I had to get some long nose pliers to help me get leverage on the screwdriver to get them undone. And be really careful when you're pulling this out. See how easy it would be to tear that ribbon cable. So just a bit of advice there, be really careful. That would tear so easily. Can you see there, it looks like an IC that's been removed. Kind of a jumper wire on it. There's a ribbon cable, so it's connecting the keyboard to the main board. And then we've got another wire there on its own. What are those? Maybe that's power wire or ground. You can see like a daughter board on the motherboard there, you see underneath the display. That's the alarm button, you can see there, the tactile switch just there. And you can see you got the microphone there and the speaker, which is behind the keyboard. I'm going to remove that lone wire so I can separate the two halves. There you go, I've already removed the ribbon cable, you can see. We can have a closer look at the front half now. So you can see that ribbon cable connects a speaker, microphone, and also the multi-pin jack on the side through that orange ribbon cable. And you can see it there. So that goes to the multi-pin mic connector. So there's a lot going down that ribbon cable. Don't rip it. It's a very thick plastic case, really well built. You can see the inside of the alarm button there. We've got some rubber gaskets around the antenna connector. That's a nice touch. Yeah, so build quality is great for the price. You've got your USB-C connector there. You can see it's got power and data connections. That means it can be used for programming. And there's the PTT and the other two programmable buttons on the side there. So volume knob, HF antenna, and UHF, VHF antenna connectors. You see the LEDs there. Okay, I'm going to try and take the PCB out. I think to do that I can see that there's, because I want to see what that daughter board is for. But you can see I've got to take the display off to get to those screws. Well, in my experience of these type of radios, then that display should just clip off. Let's give it a go. And just move that clip. Just push it in and then pull up there. That's releasing the display. There we go. Yeah, so once you put a bit of pressure on those clips, the display comes out quite easily. Just be careful again, because there's a little ribbon cable under there and you don't want to rip it. And there you are. Be really careful. I'm going to release the ribbon cable. This one you release by just pushing forward that black clip. Some are on a hinge, you have to pull the black clip back. But this one you just push out and that will release the cable. Okay, and there it is, the famous SI4732. So that daughter board is for the HF. Oh, look at that. That board, it says GPS, APRS, AM, and ANC. So it's a multi-function mod board. But you can see the chips are unpopulated, so I guess this hasn't got the GPS or APRS chips fitted, it's only the AM chip, which of course is the SI4732. So that's interesting. That means probably that iRadio UV-98 family is going to have GPS, APRS in the future. Well, that's a revelation. See, that's why I like taking these things apart. How rewarding is that? Okay, now I'm going to take the main PCB off of the metal chassis. Now before we can remove the main board from the chassis, we need to desolder a few things. This is the signal wire from the UHF VHF antenna. That solder sucker didn't get it all off. Now I'm going to use a bit of desoldering wick, add a bit of flux to it, and that'll suck up the solder like a sponge. Don't breathe those fumes in, they're horrible, not good for you. Looks better. The next one is a mini PCB at the top there between the two antenna jacks, which is the emergency button PCB. Again, I'm going to use a bit of desoldering wick, a bit of flux on it. Maybe you can see that. There. Okay, can you see that? Disconnected. I'll carefully ease the main board off. There we are. There you can see the UHF VHF antenna embedded in the chassis, the signal wire coming out that went through the PCB. You see that there. And there's the little board with the tactile switch on it for the emergency button. Oh, it just comes out now. But you have to desolder it because you have to pull the board kind of horizontally, and that board only wants to move vertically, so that's why you have to desolder it. Those three sponges will be thermal transfer pads to transfer heat from the power electronics to the chassis. So the chassis is a heat sink as well. Nice bit of casting. So let's have a close look around the board. So first of all, we've got the IP2323, which is the battery charging IC. And then we've got the 25Q32, which is a 32 megabit flash. And then these two usual suspects will be the transceiver chip. So that's where everything happens. And those are the BK4819 sharing a crystal. Now this is interesting because this is what the Quasheng UK6 UK5 has got. So you've got like two Quashengs in one radio here. That's what we mean by dual transceiver, but they're sharing a single crystal. That's interesting. Now let's have a look at this amazing transceiver on the chip, which is what this is. So it's described as a half duplex TDD FM transceiver operating within the 18 to 620 megahertz and 840 to 1.2 gigahertz band. Now the range of the radio is obviously less than this, but this is probably because of limitations of the circuit in which it's being used in. Now let's have a look at some of the key features. You'll notice CTC-SS tone receiver with TEL's CTC-SS frequency detector. It's got standard DTMF and programmable in-band dual tones. It's got FSK data modem, frequency inversion scrambler, voice activated switch, RS signal strength measurement, TX audio signal strength indication, and RX audio signal strength indication, frequency scan function. So quite a lot on this chip, to say the least. quite amazing really. And this is done for transceivers what the SI4732 has done for shortwave receivers, I should say. It's got a lot to answer for. Thank goodness we got these chips. It's really changed our hobby. And to have two rather than one in one radio, that's so much power now in handhelds compared to what we used to have. Talking of power, here is the central microprocessor or microcontroller. There's an ARM AT32F423. So what's it got? It can run it to 150 megahertz. It's got 256 kilobytes of flash. It's got 48 kilobytes of static RAM and an ADC that can operate at 5.3 megasamples per second. So quite an upgrade from the old Kwangshan UK5, UK6. So what else we got here? Just some discrete components and a voltage regulators, power transistors. Yeah, nothing to write home about there. Now these three blocks you can see, these are the RF amplifiers, and you see it's got three of them to boot. So let's have a quick look at the specs. That's interesting. They only go up to 11 watts, but only up to 600 megahertz according to this. Maybe that's at the full spec. Perhaps they derate after 600 megahertz. And you got 1.8 to 600 megahertz application range for final stage amplifiers. What else is interesting here, if anything? Let's have a quick gander. Oh, okay, here's a typical application circuit. You see from the output you've got quite a complex network of filtering there, and that will get rid of all your nasty harmonics and keep things clean, or at least it should do if they haven't cut any corners. So that's a 136 to 174 design. And then you've got a different design for 400 to 470. So if we have a closer look at the circuit, you'll see you've got three different amplifiers and probably three different types of filter circuit to cover the different ranges. Probably HF, VHF and UHF. Most likely. There's your volume control, the HF antenna, relay, and that's a connection point for the UHF, VHF. And flip this over. This is where things are also interesting. So what's this one down here? But the way you see the board is marked UV-98 makes me think this board is actually developed by iRadio and not Radtel. Okay, so this is the BL155. So that's a dual single pole double throw analog switch. There's probably a voltage regulator or something. What else we got? Not so much going on this side actually. There's another dual analog RF switch. And that A and B just indicates the different display mounting points. You got different types of LCD display, I think. And you can see connections to another little daughter board there for the PTT switches and others. And oh, this is interesting. You see that mod board, you've got a connection there marked FM and GPS. So this FM connection must be the FM antenna input from the original FM IC, which is removed on this radio. And it gets its FM antenna connection from the rubber ducky, which would normally go to the FM radio chip, which of course this one doesn't have. So it really is like a modded Kwangshan in a way. We do a similar thing for those, don't we? Interesting. I wonder if it's the same radio chip. And of course the GPS is not connected on this one because there's no GPS chips, so what do you expect? So that metal block there on the right would be heatsink for the power output RF amplifiers. Ribbon cable making all the connections to the main board. I don't know, there's maybe that looks like what else we got? I wonder what those chips are. Anyone knows? Let me know in the comments what you think they should be. And this board has also got UV-98. Do you know what? I think iRadio develops all these boards, and Radtel just buy them off of iRadio and stamp their name on it. So the brains behind all this is obviously iRadio, I think. So here's our SI4732. But the support circuit around the SI472 is really sparse. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to show you the Kwangshan mod board for the SI4732. So this is probably the best mod board you can get for the Kwangshan in my opinion. It doesn't have Bluetooth, but it's got good support circuitry around the main chip, the SI4732. I'll show you what I mean. So this is the SI4732 just here. And then to the right we have an RF amplifier. How good is that? And then that little black bit just above it is a protection diode to protect the antenna input from static electricity or overload. So Kwangshan modified with one of those mod boards is better designed and probably got better performance than the iRadio 98 Plus. How about that? Disappointed of iRadio for that. They could have spent a few more cents and put those same features in. What a shame. Missed opportunity. So what else have we got on here? Well, that's the other side of the heat sink. Another heat sink for those RF amplifiers. You've got 10 watts flowing through here and needs heat sinks. What else have we got? Well, I think this is pretty much it. Nevertheless, a lot for the money. There's a few components on the main board under this daughter board or mod board, but I'm guessing this is just an audio amplifier and there's probably not much else under there. The underside of that daughter board is completely flat. I had a look. There's no other components on the underside of that mod board. So yeah, nicely designed. Shame they didn't design the SI4732 circuit as well as the Kwangshan K5 K6 mod. But you can't have everything, can you? Well, you don't have Bluetooth on this either. That would have been nice. So thank you very much for joining me on this teardown. And if you think of anything interesting you'd like me to see test, maybe you'd like me to test the HF performance of this next to a Kwangshan, modified Kwangshan or something like that, do let me know. So if you found this video interesting or useful or helpful to you, please do subscribe and give me a like, because it really does help me bring more content like this to you. So until next time, take care, and 73.